As I'm sure the majority of you are aware, ClayRanger143, real name Michael Day, has recently faced credible allegations of grooming and inappropriate contact with minors. Today I and some guest speakers will display all of the current evidence, hold people accountable for their actions, or lack thereof, and ask how we move forward in the community. You may have noticed that there are ads on this video, and that's because I've decided that all of the revenue this video generates will be donated to the Lucy Faithful Foundation, a UK based charity which seeks to tackle child sexual exploitation by working with potential abusers to prevent offenders against children, the survivors of such abuse, and young people guilty of sexual offences in the past to prevent them from reoffending. The link to their website is in the description and the pinned comment if you also wish to donate to them. First we'll look at the allegations and what evidence supports them. In this segment I will try to break down all the evidence against Clay in roughly chronological fashion, beginning with when people were first concerned with his behaviour and ending with the present day. Suspicions around Clay's behaviour were first raised on the 15th of April 2022, with ClayRanger talking about a friend of his, who wishes to remain anonymous, in a concerning manner. We'll call them A. The screenshots here show him talking about how he could get away with sexual contact with A, who was 17 at the time. He refers to the quote-unquote fucked up laws in Virginia, but their laws state that the age of consent is 18, and sexual contact between a minor and an adult is legal, even if consensual. However, the fact that he says how they can even allow that shit is beyond me, does lead me to believe that he erroneously believed the age of consent there to be lower, so in this case, he'll get the benefit of the doubt. The next screenshots show East Norcard WX and Clay talking about their body counts. Norcar states that Clay has a body count of 1.5, whatever that means, and Clay says he's only had sex with Maya and that Norcar has had sex with several people, which Norcar then corrects to 5. Clay then lists off names of people he thinks is into Norcar: Maya, Megan, Revi, and A. Norcar states he never got Revi or A and says, so you got +1 on there, I'm not quite sure what that means, and Clay then says you'll have better luck with that. The reason I included the names of those 3 others is because, as far as I'm aware, they're adults, but they are talking about a minor in a conversation about who they've had sex with or who they think they could have sex with, when I believe both Clay and Norcar were 20 when this conversation took place. It's inappropriate, to say the least. And then this screenshot was revealed from the 19th of May 2021, showing Luna Wave, also known as Kit LX, warning someone not to reveal that Clay had done erotic roleplay with someone in the group chat. This person has also opted not to get involved, and we'll call them B. At the time, B was 16 and Clay was 19. There are some screenshots, but I can't confirm if they're from the group chat being referred to or another instance. As you're seeing, they're not explicitly sexual, but they are very erotic and suggestive. Don't get me wrong, B is not blameless here, but Clay was 19 at the time. He should have known better. Even if a minor leads you on and is actively willing to engage in erotic or sexual behaviour with you, it is your responsibility as an adult to say no. There are some more screenshots indicating his behaviour with Maya. This one from the 30th of March 2022 shows him pretty happy about the fact he had sex with Maya, which if nothing else shows how sex obsessed he is. This screenshot shows an account by the name of Martin Truex Jr. saying he wants to snuggle with Maya and A again. This screenshot here makes it pretty evident that Clay is this person. He lives in North Carolina and has Ranger in his channel name, simple as that. Given he's been pretty open about the fact he's had sex with Maya, it's pretty concerning that he's talking about snuggling A again, who was of course a minor at the time. There is also this photo, which shows Clay and Norcar with their arms around A, which does confirm they've met up before. Here is another screenshot showing that Clay has in the past made sexual jokes with A. This continues with this screenshot from August 26th, 2020. A says fuck you and Clay responds with when you're 18 goddamn, which shows that not only is he happy to make inappropriate sexual jokes in the presence of and towards a minor, but that he's thinking about sexual activity with them. Personally, I think wanting to engage in sexual activity with a minor but waiting until they turn 18 isn't much better than doing it when they're underage, because it shows that you don't really have any moral issues with having sex with a minor and that your only concern is staying on the right side of the law. There's also this one showing Clay A and who I believe is Norcar engaging in roleplay, which while not sexual here, is still pretty weird in my opinion. This one indicates that Clay believes A has a thing for him, as well as Norcar, Maya and Radio, who is of course Radioactive Girl 00. I don't want to leave the realm of evidence too many times, but here we have a situation where a 20-year-old acknowledges that a minor is romantically interested in him, makes sexual jokes with them, and has met them in person at least once. This is a dangerous situation, because a minor who has a thing for Clay and no doubt looks up to him is vulnerable to Clay asking them for sexual acts. I'm not for a second suggesting that actually occurred, but I'm pointing out the fact that the potential for a statutory rape situation was there. This evidence was presented to Radio on the 23rd of April 2022, and upon being presented with some of it, Radio says that Clay has no intention of being another RMWX, and that she knows he wouldn't do that. Nova points out that the age difference between Clay and A makes his behaviour weird, to which she says they're platonic and that Clay has no intention of soliciting nudes or sexual acts, and also that Clay has a tendency to be platonic and that it can get misinterpreted. Just for the record, Britannica defines platonic as having a close relationship in which there is no romance or sex, and judging by past evidence, there is clearly a sexual undertone to Clay and A's friendship. Radio once again claims that Clay has no intention of doing anything sexual, and also confirms that Clay and A did meet up, but says they just hung out. She says Clay and A were just hugging, and that she knows him well enough to know that he wouldn't be another RMWX. She says that this is all a big misunderstanding, and that if this was to do with someone 16 or younger, they should be concerned, but that it's just platonic. When told about his erotic roleplay with B, she says he did that once, but doesn't do it anymore. She is then confronted with this image, which shows Clay's roles in B's server. He has the roles of Daddy, NSFW Bulgies, and NSFW Cummies, which is obviously inappropriate. Should B have set these roles for him? No. But the bottom line was that B was 16, perhaps 17 at the time of this specific screenshot. Clay was 19 or 20. He should have known that it was inappropriate and told B to remove the roles. At the very least, so as to not make himself look okay with being labelled that. It also hints at a dark and potentially sexual relationship between the two. The fact he was called those names implies something sexual and explicit. If that's the case, we don't know because the evidence isn't there at the moment, but those roles are certainly concerning. If we go back to Radio, I think she totally misjudged the situation and allowed her biases to get in the way of her judgment. She didn't seem to respect the evidence and claim the relationship between Clay and A was platonic when the evidence clearly indicated otherwise. She had no basis to claim that he had changed, nor any basis to call it all a misunderstanding. She is someone that has to be held accountable for this, and thankfully you will be seeing her later regarding that. On the 7th of May 2022, Clay was privately confronted with a few of these screenshots and simply asked for some clarification. Diamond makes this clear, explaining that the messages between Clay and A were concerning and that they just want his input. Someone else in the group mentions that they were suspicious, and Clay responds by saying if they were sexual, he gets why. He's shown the messages and says it's unwise to make those sexual jokes in public, as if it would be acceptable in private. Nova erroneously says that A was 15 and Clay was 18, and Clay responds by saying the joke was made the day after he turned 16. He's then confronted with the "I could get away with it" screenshot, to which he responds by saying that he should have been more careful and says that the age of consent should be raised to 18 everywhere. He also says that they never did anything sexual. He apologises for coming across as creepy and for giving the wrong impression. He claims he wasn't thinking clearly at the time and shouldn't have brought it into the server. He says that it looks odd and doesn't know why he thought it was a good idea to say that. When questioned as to why he said that, he says he has a horrible impulse problem, but nothing to a dangerous level. When asked why he's so close with A, he says he's one of the few people A trusts, which makes this all even worse. When asked why Kit freaked out so hysterically about the ERPing with B, Clay says he didn't want people to get the wrong impression. He admits to doing it, saying that he shouldn't have done it, and that he was in a dark place after a past breakup. He quite weirdly states that he did it out of spite, because B makes a lot of horny jokes, but let's think about this logically. If you're annoyed about the fact someone is constantly sexual, why on God's green earth would you erotically roleplay with them? Surely that's just going to lead them on and make them even more sexual. I can't tell if Clay's trying to deceive the people in this group chat or himself with this wafer-thin explanation. Nova refers to the meetup he and A had and the image of him with A. He says nothing sexual happened and that they even discussed that sex is a no-no. But to me this is contradictory. Clay tries to suggest that the sexual jokes were not sexual, with no meaning there, and that their hug was platonic. But to me, a relationship in which you both sit down and discuss taking sex off the table isn't a platonic one, because in a platonic relationship, that level of attraction isn't present. Clay acknowledges that A has a thing for him, so clearly it isn't a platonic relationship, even if Clay wants it or sees it as one. Clay apologises a final time but says that the group chat should not have been made, because he's not a paedophile, and that if he was, he'd be in jail by now. How naive. But as Nova explains, that's a stupid opinion, because it's better to get clarification first, as opposed to immediately going public. Unfortunately for Clay, his impulse control got the best of him here, because he decided to tell 2 people about the confrontation, which led to one of the members being unfriended by 2 close friends of his. If Clay didn't want it public, why tell more people? What the hell did he think was going to happen, that these people were just going to sit on the information? Clay defends himself by saying he needed emotional support because he was bawling during the confrontation, which just sounds an awful lot like guilt tripping to me. From then on, not much happens and Clay leaves the group chat. This would then go quiet for months on end as the people in the group figured out how to move forward. This was until about October time when Supernova decided to publicly accuse Clay of showing groomer-like behaviour. With this he included an evidence folder, but accidentally left editing permissions on, which led to said folder being flooded with porn and insults. On the 29th of October 2022, Nova released his video, which detailed some of the evidence presented here and broke down Clay's now deleted livestream, responding to the allegations. I'm not going to address the livestream because Nova already did it very well and I don't need to. The video is an hour long and it's linked in the description below. I have to give credit to Nova, Serin and any others who worked on the video, because let's face it, most people didn't believe them when the video dropped. They knew it would jeopardise their channel prospects and they did it anyway. It's easier for me to now make a video on Clay because it's universally accepted that he's a garbage human being, but in October most people backed him, so it did take some real bravery to make that video. In response to the video, Clay released what he called a defense folder, a now deleted Google Drive folder containing what he thought proved his innocence. The document is broken down in a 45-minute long video by Nova, where he shows how the folder does nothing more than try and show all the bad things Nova has ever done, which is just whataboutism, and doesn't show him to be innocent in the slightest. I will link that video in the description too. On the 17th of January 2023, the Global Weather and ES Society, or GWES, released a statement saying that it had concluded an investigation into Clay and that new allegations had led to him being removed as a staff member. They claimed they had credible evidence against him indicating physical battery or assault, unlawful contact with a minor, and sexual misconduct. They did, at the time, not provide any evidence. It was at this time that Clay decided now was the time to make his escape, with a community post appearing on his channel claiming that his channel had been given to a 32-year-old Jackson Miller Davis, who claimed that Clay was receiving mental help and therapy. I personally find it hard to believe that this wasn't Clay pretending to be someone else. A good chunk of the post is dedicated to calling GWES corrupt and its statement exaggerated, which seems awfully defensive for someone who is supposed to be totally uninvolved in the situation. Despite the fact that Clay had run away, or at the very least tried to hide himself, there was still some skepticism about the claims. Most people were now distancing themselves from Clay, but people wanted evidence. So on the 22nd of January 2023, GWES published their evidence document, which we will now break down. The link to both GWES documents will be in the description below. The document begins by saying the following material contains verified testimonials, confessions, and other sensitive material relating to misdemeanor battery and sexual misconduct crimes. The first screenshot it displays is an interview with a GWES staff member, who first claims Clay was loud and obnoxious around this person's dad. They then allege that during a meetup in June of 2022, Clay and another person repeatedly slapped them after overhearing them saying something self-deprecating. He proceeded to give a half-assed apology and say that he should have told them to stop earlier. Clay would also display jealousy, with this person being separated from who I assume to be their significant other, and Clay is alleged to have said, "Ever since you got to my house, you've been talking about person non-stop. It's like a broken record. It's been person this, person that. This same person refers to another individual who would make sexual jokes with Clay. They say they never said anything about it because it wasn't their business, but that others had told Clay to be careful. They also allege that Clay non-consensually shared a girl's explicit photos to other people, and that when they said to Clay they'd told others about it, Clay said that as long as a specific Gwez member didn't know, that it was fine. An interview with a Gwez member is also contained in which they allege Clay displayed some alarming behaviour. They claim that Clay would complain about how some of his behaviour was also displayed on episodes of To Catch a Predator, and would also display concern and anxiety around the age of consent laws, which are two major red flags. They would cut ties with Clay in September 2020 and then partially reconcile, but got an uncomfortable vibe around them. He was constantly negative and would get increasingly abusive over time. They claim these behaviours date back as early as 2019. These are all very alarming. His concern for age of consent laws indicate he had no real moral issue with sexual acts with minors, and his behaviour being comparable to that of people seen on To Catch a Predator suggests that he is at the very least dangerously manipulative, and at worst, a paedophile. The allegations that he provided explicit images of someone without their consent makes him out to be someone with little regard for people's wishes in pursuit of sexual gratification for himself or others. This was the nail in Clay's coffin. He has been almost universally condemned by creators and community members alike, and as evidence so far, the evidence against him was extensive. But Clay was a popular member of the community, and had a lot of friends, and they were yet to respond. But this would soon change, and yet more evidence was thrown on the pile. On the 27th of January 2023, Kit would publish a testimony alleging misconduct against him by Clay. A link to the document is in the description below, as well as the narration he provided, which I will now use. It won't show the whole document, only what I think is relevant.
It's me. On January 15th, I finally got the courage to discuss the manipulation, abuse, and misconduct of someone who I thought I was safe with. Today, I'm sharing my story. This is something I've thought about sharing for a while now, but because of my trauma being suppressed and other things were happening in my life at the time, I couldn't bring myself to do it, so I apologize for that. My name is Kit. This is my experience with Michael Day, also known as ClayRanger143, how I was violated by him, why I believed him, and how I plan to move forward. The first time I met him online was in 2020 when I was 14 years old, when I first started becoming known for producing EAS content in a group chat called Spark Nation 6, I think, along with the rest of his friends like Radioactive Girl 00 and Thunderbuddy 01. At the time, I was aware of allegations of racism being made against him, and I talked with my sister about them at one point. She suggested I drop him due to his nature of seemingly not owning up to it. Fast forward to July of 2022, I was 17. I was aware of a meetup happening between a few of Michael's friends, and because I needed to get more hours on my driver's permit, I decided to tag along, which they were alright with. Because of the limited room in the apartment we were all going to meet up with at, I could not sleep with them, so I stayed a few nights at a Red Roof Inn in the area. I only could have imagined what he would have tried to do to me if the scenario was the opposite. An hour out from the first time I saw him in person, this is the conversation that followed. Prior to the meetup, someone was joking about fucking me if I had the chance, which is really uncalled for. And then he has the impudence to tell me about age of consent, where we were meeting up. Why he felt the need to say that? I don't know, but apparently age of consent is more important than morals.
Let's pause here for a moment and examine the evidence he provides. While not an example of sexual misconduct, the way Clay puts words in Kit's mouth by saying "you don't even like me" sounds so manipulative, as if he's saying it so that Kit feels obligated to respond by saying "no, I do like you." This one is more concerning. Why is Clay thinking about this? The very fact he is suggests he's clearly interested in a sexual relationship with Kit.
Nothing really significant happened in the middle of the meetup, but after we were done filming his series radio reviews alone for the night, he asked me if he had permission to do something. I didn't try to ask him what he would do because I was too confused, but he kissed me on the forehead. I don't remember saying anything back out of shock, but I felt like this was the absolute precursor to the day that I left and the day that I was violated by someone I looked as an idol. The day I left the apartment to go back home, Michael was apparently jealous that I had spent time bonding with another friend that was part of the meetup and never expressed it to either me or them. He called my name and had me go to the only bedroom in the apartment, but shut the doors a minute or two later when he asked me if he could make out with me. Lots of thoughts were rushing through my head, especially as I was thinking about his living situation in the mountains, where he was raised with little to no social life, though I was deceived, as this was a tactic of his emotional manipulation, and considering the other time he had kissed me on the head after radio reviews. I wish I said no, but I impulsively said yes because of the pressure. He told me not to tell anyone, even the owner of the apartment, which really threw me off. After the whole ordeal, I was numb. I didn't know what to think because I was more so focused on packing up and filming the weekly test on Nova the radio. Later that day, I met up with another one of my friends in Indiana, but it was overshadowed by initially being stalked, then harassed on a No Weather Radio Discord server by someone who I won't name. I consider this to be the reason why I'd forgotten about Michael doing that to me. The entire day was so fucking overwhelming because not only could I not get any sleep that night knowing everything that happened, but I had to leave for another vacation the following morning. In October of 2022, I was made aware of allegations of ERPing between Michael and another friend of mine. It was absolutely true that Michael did this disgusting roleplay with a minor who was 16 at the time while Michael was 19. What irks me even more about this now that I look back is that someone mentioned that if he was willing to do some weird fucking kissing roleplay on the internet, that puts another one of his peers in danger in the real world, especially if they're younger than him. The reason I believed Michael for so long was because I was emotionally manipulated by him, as was a lot of his other friends. He made a situation a woe is me moment and deflected all blame, even when conversing with him privately. But more importantly, I thought he was someone I could trust when in reality it was the complete opposite. During one of our conversations, this is when he admitted to making out with me.
Once again, we'll stop. This is blatantly manipulative from Clay. He's being kind to Kit, telling him, no, you're not manipulative, it's him. Look at what he's doing to us. And this one is perhaps the single creepiest screenshot in this entire video. This man's been thinking multiple times about making out with a minor when he was 20 years of age. It's unnerving.
Originally, Michael was going to come visit Illinois for another week, but because of the limited room in the car we were traveling in, my suitcase was really big, along with the other bags and the tub of weather radios brought with 4 radio reviews, how expensive plane tickets were at the time, and his money situation. We couldn't afford to have him there. Obviously, this was a disappointment at the time since plans were pretty unrealistic, but instead of accepting it, Michael not only tried to bargain with us by looking for cheaper plane tickets, but also tried to take his anger out on us. It got to a point where my friends had to leave Frank's house because he was becoming a handful. They tried getting him a stuffed animal to make him feel better, but unfortunately it didn't suffice. For the rest of the trip, he would bring up this disappointment any chance he could for the rest of the day in a guilt-trippy manner. Back in North Carolina, unfortunately we did cuddle again, and he did kiss me once on the head as I was passed out. All I have to say is that if he did come home with my friends to Illinois, things could have been a lot worse, especially with violation of property, or worse, further misconduct. I'm sorry for keeping this in for so long. I'm sorry to anybody that I've hurt by this information. More importantly, I'm sorry for believing him for so long. I still feel numb to the fact that I looked up to someone for quite a while and got so close to them to the point where I was just a toy to them. It can happen to anyone if you aren't careful, and I regret not coming forward about this sooner because I was so trapped.
So a good friend of Clay's has now come out and claimed he was kissed without warning and consent, and that Clay tried to use guilt-tripping manipulation to get his way. It's pretty damning. And things take a darker turn here. On the 5th of February 2023, Nova would release a video titled "Stop Pretending Like You Care About ClayRanger143, where he'd condemn multiple people for washing their hands clean of Clay despite adamantly defending him beforehand. EaseNorcarWX would leave a comment asking why he'd been included in the video, and said that he'd been on Nova's side since new evidence arose. Further down the thread, he left a comment saying, "But to cut to the chase, he basically befriended me and got close to me as a friend so he could get closer to my girlfriend by extension. He isn't friends with other people who are in open relationships, so I guess we were prime candidates for him." To sum up what happened prior, he kept playing the guilt-tripping card by saying stuff along the lines of, "Oh, you two are lucky being able to have sex and all, since he was a virgin prior. In our relationship, we agreed it has to be mutual agreements, otherwise it's a no-go," and he knew that. Eventually, the guilt tripping got to me and I fell for it and said it was fine. My girlfriend had the same thing happen to her and she reluctantly said yes, but heavily regretted it later on and got uncomfortable with him due to feelings of being pressured, so future meetups never happened between those two because of that. At the time, I never realised he was using me for that purpose, and only realised this last month after he had already been banished for the pedophilia stuff. It's pretty obvious what he's saying here is that Clay guilt-tripped Norcar and his girlfriend into getting a one-night stand with her. If true, that's disgusting, potentially criminal, and honestly pathetic. A clear picture has been painted of Clay, a man who is so desperate, so horny and so manipulative that he will do anything for sexual gratification. Does he have no shame? Does he not feel even a little bit pathetic for not being able to get to third base without literally begging his friends to share their girls for a bit? Seeking some extra clarification, Diamond would message Norcar on the 7th of February 2023 and he would reply with this, in essence reinforcing the fact that Clay guilt-tripped his friend into getting sex. He expands on what he said earlier though, saying that Clay would find excuses to leave meetups when Norcar's girlfriend couldn't make it, and that friends of Clay said he'd only faked being friends with Norcar for a quote-unquote unknown reason. The worst part of this is obviously the fact that the girl involved was made to feel forced and uncomfortable by Clay. Norcar would then follow it up by saying that when Clay did meet the girl, he'd be hogging her. He'd also say that Clay had tried this with other people, namely Mitchell's girlfriend Holly, resulting in them both being uncomfortable. The people he's referring to here are MonteCat33 and the Siren Geek, and wanting some concrete answers, I asked Radioactive Girl to ask if this was true, and MonteCat responded by saying that Clay never asked for sexual favours, but that he did talk about sexual topics. It may be the case that Clay didn't outright ask for sexual favours and instead tried to be more subtle in his attempts to get sex, but let's not speculate too heavily. Diamond would then ask if the girl in question is Maya, and Norcar would confirm it was, who, if you remember, was the girl Clay was bragging about having sex with, which seems to corroborate part of this story, and honestly make him look even more pathetic. It's also come to light that some of Clay's personal information has been leaked. If you use this information to harass him or his family, you have no place in this community. Two wrongs don't make a right. You may think that Clay being a garbage human being justifies it, but it doesn't. It makes you an internet tough guy thinking that you're all big and strong behind a keyboard. It doesn't. It just makes you look like a bandwagon jumping coward. To bookend this section as a whole, the evidence here is extensive and shows Clay as being dangerously sex-obsessed, manipulative, concerned only with the legal ramifications of sexual acts with minors and not the moral ones, and someone with a persecution complex. The Jack Davis facade also shows him to be a liar, and a bad one at that. The next section is about holding people accountable, and unfortunately, the list is quite extensive. Before I begin, I want to say don't be hostile to these people. I don't want to see tweets and comments thrashing and harassing them, because it doesn't achieve anything. I'm not going to stand for petty and pathetic bullying attempts. In this whole embargo, it's become apparent that beyond Clay, who obviously needs to be held accountable, there are others who through ignorance and bias suppress this information and prolong Clay's presence in a position of power. Kit is one of those people. Kit had provided evidence for some of his claims in the testimony, and for the most part, I believe him. However, I still had questions. He said, "In January of this year, I met him once again, but this time I was with friends who were aware of the situation. I assumed that this referred to the making out situation and wondered why they'd still be friends with someone who'd not only made out with a minor but also had ERPing allegations levelled at them. So on January 27th, 2023 at 9:52 PM GMT, I emailed him saying, "Hi Kit, I'm planning to make a video outlining all of Clay's actions at some point and would greatly appreciate it if you could provide me with some sort of timeline as to when you first met up, when he kissed you, when you left him, and when you found out about the Wes document that served as the nail in his coffin. It'd also be helpful to know if/when you found out about Nova's initial allegations/video. I'd also appreciate it if you could tell me if anyone else you know who met up with/spoke to Clay suffered any abuse at his hands. However, if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm disappointed with you. If the document is correct, it seems when you met up with Clay this month, you and your friends all knew about Clay making out with you. If you knew about Nova's video, why not come forward? Why still trust that Clay was innocent? I don't want to come across as victim blaming, but I do feel you have to take some accountability for not speaking up at that point. If you plan to counter that by saying he manipulated you, can you explain what he said or did to convince you that he was innocent? I don't want to come across as hostile, just honest. Thanks, Harvester." He would reply 11 minutes later saying, "Hi Harvester, Michael and I met up on July 10th, 2022. He made out with me on July 13th. I left him the moment I found out I had been violated, which was January 14th/15th, I think, and I found out about the Wes document as soon as it was released. I do know of a few more people that suffered at the hands of Michael, but I do not wish to identify them right now because I'm not sure they would be comfortable with that. Also, to clear up some confusion, my friends were not aware about Michael making out with me. They were aware of the ERP allegations back in October, which turned out to be true. I apologise if I wasn't concise with that wording. In addition, I do agree that there is some fault on my end for not coming forward about this as soon as it happened, but at the same time, trauma is complex. The excuse Michael used to play off his actions was his ERP victim's reaction of not wanting to be involved in any part of the investigations. I know the victim personally, and I can attest that he did not want anything to do about it. Once I came forward to him, he dropped Michael over the course of a couple of days. I truly apologise if I worded anything poorly or further caused confusion throughout this whole situation. If you need me to clear anything more up, I'd be happy to do that. Thanks for reaching out to me, Kit." So that clears it up. They didn't know about them making out at the time. I believe that Clay would use the fact his victims want nothing to do with the investigation to plead his innocence. But in one particular place, Kit's testimony does not align with reality. He says, "In October 2022, I was made aware of ERPing allegations between Michael and another friend of mine. However, as we saw earlier, he told people not to talk about it in May of 2021. Because of this, I sent him another email on the 28th of January 2023 at 12:59 AM GMT saying, 'Hi Kit, thanks for your response, I appreciate it. A screenshot has been brought to my attention that shows you on the 19th of May 2021 saying to someone not to specify that Michael ERP'd with B in the GC because he will fucking kill me. This simply doesn't align with your post in which you say, in October of 2022 I was made aware of allegations of ERPing between Michael and another friend of mine. I'd like to know what happened between those two, why you were so afraid of it being revealed, and why it doesn't seem true that it was only last October that ERPing allegations were first brought to your attention. Once again, I'm not trying to be hostile or confrontational, I'm just looking for some answers.' The image was included in the email and I have yet to get a response. Unfortunately, the email included in the testimony was changed at 7:49 AM on the 29th of January 2023, and so I decided to send the same email to that one. I have yet to receive a reply on that one also. This reflects terribly on Kit. It paints him as someone happy to change the details of a story in order to improve his image. It's disingenuous, and the fact he's left the community suggests he doesn't want to be held accountable at all and simply wants to avoid the consequences. I believe that he's an adult now, and part of adulthood is taking responsibility for your mistakes, admitting wrongdoing and telling people not only that you're sorry, but how you're going to make up for what you've done. Kit, if you're watching this, this isn't an attack or an attempt to cancel you, and I don't hate you on a personal level. This is simply about admitting where you've gone wrong and learning from it. Until you're ready to do that, however, there's no place for you here. Another person who has to be held accountable is Gwyneth. I admittedly don't know him very well, but I do know that he was a close friend of Clay's. After Clay was confronted on May 7th, it seems he told Gwyneth about this because he added Nova as a friend on Discord and attempted to confront Nova about the allegations. What's important to note here is that none of this had been made public at the time. Nova wasn't swinging around claims of pedophilia, which is precisely why he and others reached out to Clay first, to avoid a massive and damaging misunderstanding. But as seen here, Gwinnett reacts pretty angrily. As Nova points out, Clay was never called a paedophile and was confronted to give him a chance to explain himself. However, this is where Gwinnett makes a fool of himself, saying that ERPing with a minor is legally bad but morally not. This is something I find monumentally stupid. In what world is discussing your sexual fantasies with and to a minor morally justifiable? He also mentions that Clay wanted to fucking kill himself, which to me just sounds like textbook manipulation. It's an easy guilt trip, claim you have suicidal thoughts and make people feel pity for you. Gwinnett states that he was groomed when he was younger, and that he thought the execution of the whole thing was wrong. I can't say for sure if this whole ordeal was handled badly or not, because I wasn't involved in this back then, but it certainly seems like they made the right choice in waiting before going public with this information. That's sensible. Gwinnett goes on to say, legally it's wrong, morally it's who gives a shit. This is dangerously ignorant. It is pretty damn clear now that Clay is not someone minors are safe around, and I am certain that his actions will have lasting effects on his victims. In having the attitude of, oh, well, who cares, Gwinnett was enabling Clay's behaviour through sheer bias and ignorance. This continues when he says, what is in your benefit to care, which is in essence telling Nova to mind his own business. He cared because Clay was acting inappropriately around a minor. Gwinnett here displays both bias and ignorance, and in doing so enables Clay's behaviour. It's as simple as that. I reached out to him on Instagram to see if I could get a response. I asked him if he had anything to say about the situation, and he decided to ignore me. Personally, I think the community is owed an apology from him. Like Radio, he should have attempted to remove his bias and view the evidence objectively, and not approach the situation with a dismissive, almost arrogant attitude. He's an adult, and if he wants to repair his reputation and regain some lost respect, he'll own up to it, apologise, and take some responsibility like a grown man. Despite him revealing more about Clay's disturbing actions, I do think Norcar has to be held accountable also. Not as much as others, because he has apologised and actively helped in efforts to expose Clay, but particularly when Clay brought up in discussions about body counts, I think there should have been alarm bells ringing in Norcar's head, because that isn't normal. At the very least, I think we are owed an acknowledgement that he should have drawn a line in the sand and made it clear to Clay that talking about minors in that context is wrong, and an apology for not doing so. The final group of people who need to be held accountable are vast and varied. It's important to remember that most people didn't believe Nova et al. Before or even after he published the video. He received plenty of abuse, which just goes to show how much power a big creator wields in terms of shaping opinion. Most people wouldn't have called Clay out for this for fear of abuse, and so you have to give them immense credit for ploughing on. Too many people in this community jump on bandwagons. I get it, you want to be liked, but it makes you look weak-minded and desperate for attention. Most people didn't change their minds when Gwez released the evidence document. They changed their minds when Gwez said they'd remove Clay. At the time, compared to Nova's video, it was total hearsay. Yet this is what made most people believe that Clay was a predator. Why? Because Gwez is a well-known organisation in this community. Nova is a small creator. I honestly believe that if I'd made that video instead of Nova, in identical style, with identical evidence, most people would have believed me, simply because I'm a big name here. That's not me trying to say that I should have done it instead, but a hypothetical that lays bare how fickle this community is. Hopefully my status in the community means that this video will convince those still on the fence, and force people who need to be held accountable to finally speak up and give everyone a much deserved apology. You've all heard me droning on about this for God knows how long now, so it's about time I give other smaller creators a chance to give their perspectives on the matter. There will probably be some overlap with evidence I've already discussed, but it gives you a chance to hear how other people view this situation. First up, we have Mr. Weather.
Hey there everyone, Mr. Weather here. Before I say anything, I want to give a special thank you to Harvester for letting me speak up in this very important video. Here I'm going to be talking about my view and thoughts regarding ClayRanger143. Long before my speculation about Clay began and when I was starting out in this community in early 2020, I really did try to become friends with Clay because at the time I admired his content and him as a person in general. I also added him as a friend on Discord in a desperate attempt to reach out to someone that I looked up to in this community. And I remember enjoying the conversations we had then. Later on I was adding him to things like group chats, Discord servers, voice chats, stuff along those lines. Even later down the road after that, I even participated with him in one radio reviews episode and was sincerely hoping for more opportunities like that again. And for a short time, I considered him a friend in my book. I actually thought he was a genuine and awesome person, but I sadly did not yet realize everything that was going on behind closed doors at the time. Despite taking what I had with him into consideration, I was eventually one of the people who found and gave only a few but still important and damning screenshots showing Clay and his horrendous actions. To give some details, I was added to an NWS GSP group chat in late 2021. In that group chat, there were people like Gwynny EAS, East Norcar WX, ThunderBuddy01, and many others, but Clay was most notable. Over a lengthy period of time in that group chat, I was made aware of certain conversations and disturbing topics that Harvester had already pointed out. It is really alarming that someone could possibly think that it's okay to act and talk like that. Over the past year, all of us got disturbing reactions from some of Clay's defenders. Some examples that come to mind include Nova receiving several racist comments and death threats, our old Google evidence folder back in October being destroyed with NSFW content, Gwyneth EAS basically insulting Nova the night we were talking to Clay about his behavior, and many other incidences throughout the year. Again, all of it is outrageous to me on how people think that they should feel the need to act like that. It is all genuinely disgusting, and I believe a good majority of this community needs to change its horrible behavior immediately. Overall, I wish some of the community had listened to us firsthand, was not willfully ignorant, didn't harass my friends or myself on several different occasions, and wasn't quick to defend Clay multiple times simply because he was a big creator in this community. Also, I want to say that I am extremely grateful for my good friends like Nova, Saren, Diamond, who over the past year all stood together and recognized Clay's disgusting signs and took the risk and bravery to call him out. I sincerely hope that this situation does not happen again anywhere, but I also hope that we all now recognize some of the warning signs of something similar that could sadly arise again, and that we all never forgive or forget what Clay did, and that the people involved and harmed by him can find peace in order to move forward. Now Clay, I believe that you will most likely listen to this, and honestly I really don't know what your intentions are at this moment, but just remember, whatever you try to do to erase your past, it's not going to go away anytime soon. You don't deserve to have your platform back, and I believe you shouldn't have had one from the beginning. Your disturbing toxic behavior belongs absolutely nowhere in this world. I hope that I never see you interact with anyone in this community ever again. You need to accept that you're done for. Everyone who once had your back has now left you. They don't plan on going back, and neither should you.
We now have someone who's been involved in this since April of last year, Diamond Legends.
I'm going to use this to voice some thoughts I have on the ClayRanger situation. The situation with ClayRanger to me exposed a very worrying problem that I see today regarding content creators and their relationship with their fan base. Clay is a manipulator. It showed in how he conducts himself and his ability to manipulate his audience. The live stream he did in October is evidence enough. It was an hour of a mental breakdown being live streamed to his impressionable fan base so he could weaponize them and attack those who criticized him. Even today, those on the investigation team are still harassed. If there's anything out of this situation that I want people to analyze and take away from it, I want the community to understand that your favorite content creator, at the end of the day, is a regular person. They are no more important than you. Don't idolize them on a personal level. Just appreciate the content they create and leave it at that. The same goes for any other creator or person you may meet. Even me. Don't look up to me. Don't idolize me. Form your own opinions about people. Don't let someone else do that for you. Look out for yourself and don't let people like Clay have a platform.
And finally, we have someone willing to apologise for their part in this situation, Radioactive Girl 00.
So first off, I'd like to thank Harvester here for giving me a chance to speak about this, and second off, this is going to be short and simple and completely unscripted, so if I accidentally repeat something, that's why. So, as you likely saw in the video back in May of 2022, I was added to a group chat about Clay's behavior and how it was off, to say the least. While I did only see a couple snippets because not much evidence was out at the time, and it's something I would never ever truly defend, my response to it was really not great. It really wasn't. I was way too dismissive and in denial about it, not wanting to believe someone I truly cared about before would commit such acts. Obviously, I'm not going to give excuses because what I said was stupid. Plain and simple. That's all I can really say about that. With that being said, though, I do want to take this time real quick to apologize to the greater community for not speaking up about that sooner. And I'll gladly take fault for my part in that. Since then, though, I will say I have learned greatly from that event and have kept an eye out for concerning behavior from others in the community, because what was said and done by Clay is completely inexcusable, and this goes for anyone, like online, in real life, or any of that. No one should ever tolerate that type of behavior from anyone at all. It doesn't matter who. No one should ever be doing that. Other than that, that's all I really have to say. But just like what everyone else is thinking and such, I'm extremely disappointed and disgusted by what he did. And like I said, no one should ever tolerate that type of behavior at all. Otherwise, I thank you guys for listening to this, and once again, major thanks to Harv for letting me speak on this situation.
This is a scandal that has rocked the community. A big, influential creator has been exposed for being a terrible human being and a predator. What should make everyone part of this community feel shameful is the fact that this has been going on for years, but possibly as far back as 2019, and the signs were ignored. Let me put that into perspective for you. If you're watching this at 14 years of age, Clay has been showing signs of this behaviour for 28.5% of your entire life. Over a quarter of your entire time on this earth that this man has been like this, enabled by bias and ignorance. How many people could have avoided harassment and violation at the hands of Clay? Clearly, lessons have to be learned and changes have to be made. The first port of call to me is to stop this constant sexual talk. I have a rare perspective in this community in that I joined it as a 15-year-old kid, and back then the sexual jokes and references seemed fine, but I'm 19 now and it's clearly not. Most of this community range between 13 and 16 years old, and that is too young to be discussing sexual topics in this manner. If you're between those ages, I want you to recognise that not only is this behaviour not appropriate for your age, but that it attracts older people. Clay is evidently a very sex-obsessed person, and I'm not for a second blaming the victims, but if the community in general stopped being so sexual, he probably wouldn't have been able to talk to A and B like this, because it would have stood out. Older creators need to help stamp it out. If you see a younger creator talk sexually, even if it's just once, I want you to tell them that it's not acceptable here and why. If we can do that, it'll make the community safer. We also need to drop the hero worship of creators. We're not saints, we're not special, we are regular, fallible human beings with problems and flaws of our own. I get that you may enjoy our content, but if we get criticised, it is your duty as members of the community to look upon that evidence critically and give respect to it. I get that Nova are brash, confrontational and argumentative as people, and I'd prefer it if they weren't, but don't shoot the messenger. Respect the evidence on its own 2 feet rather than dismissing it because you don't like the people presenting it on a personal level. What I think people don't understand is that you only see a very, very small snippet of people's lives online. I don't divulge everything about my personal life, and some of you may even fill in the blanks and have your own preconceived notions about what it's like based on what you do know about me. But you have to understand that it's very, very easy to mediate yourself online. It's easy to present yourself as kind and caring and charming, because it's a lot harder to tell compared to when you spend time with someone in person. So if future allegations come out against an EAS creator, whether they be as serious as this or not, don't think, oh, this can't be true, how can this really nice guy be so bad? You have to remind yourself that most of the time when you're online, you only see what people want you to see. That should be evident in this very video. Do you think I've done this all in one go? I'm not a master orator. I've edited screenshots to redact people's names where necessary, and I've only used segments of conversations and testimonies for brevity's sake. You only see what I want you to see. That's the internet in a nutshell. Please remember that. For some further input on this specific point, here's EASS with his take.
Hello, my name is Ace from EASS, and today I'm here to talk about, in my opinion, a couple things we can do to help the community overall move forward. One, I think it is important that we give non-offenders, people that were not guilty of any sexual misconduct or anything like Clay, people that, like, maybe were just on Clay's side and later, obviously in light of evidence decided to jump ship. And I think, in my opinion, people that were stark supporters of Clay, if they acknowledge that they messed up by supporting him and they apologize and that they want to try and change and understand more about these types of things, I think we should let them. Obviously, people like Clay don't deserve a second chance. That's all I'm saying. Clay should never come back to this community or the internet ever again. I hope he never does. But I'm just saying that for people that do still feel guilty and want to try and redeem themselves, I think we should let them. And I'm not saying you have to trust them immediately. I'm just saying, don't just shut them down over one, thing, Life's too short to be holding grudges. Do you really want to be pissed off at them in 5 years when you could have just given them time to breathe and let them prove themselves, and you might have made a great friend from it? And you know what? If it doesn't work out, okay, then you don't have to be their friend, or you don't have to trust them. I'm just saying that we need to be a little bit more forgiving in this regard. I'm not saying that you need to just, anyone that wronged you need to pat them on the back and be like, hey, if they wronged you, they wronged you. I'm not trying to tell you what to think. But I'm saying if you have no interpersonal conflict with this person, like if you don't have any personal drama with them, I wouldn't let the opinion of a couple people influence you into hating them. I'd say form your own opinion on them first. 2, we need to encourage better communication between minors and adults in the community when it comes to dealing with potential predators or just people maybe that aren't inherently predators, but they're still acting inappropriately in our community. So, let's say someone comes to me, I don't know, let's say some 15-year-old comes to me and says, this person was flirting with me in the server or whatever. Okay, if they have evidence, and they can show that evidence, and even if they don't, of course I'll still hear them out, but especially if they have evidence, I believe that's my responsibility then from there to warn others, to try and assist this person as needed. But it's my responsibility to warn other people, to talk to Harv, talk to Radio, talk to Electric, talk to Nova, talk to Saren, talk to anyone else that I have contact with in the EAS community, talk to all the creators I have around my server, and just let them know what's going on, and we can discuss from there what to do. So, if anyone, kid or adult, if you see something weird, please tell somebody. Don't think they're going to make fun of you. And if someone makes fun of you for reporting what you could think is actual serious misconduct, just forget them. Leave. Come to us. We'll listen, and we'll try and see what we can do to help you. So yes, please, if you see anything going on that you think is suspicious, please tell somebody. It is very important. And then 3, overall, if, God forbid, something like the Clay situation happens again, which it's not an impossibility, unfortunately, we have to make a swift, consolidated community effort once these things come to light. I'm not pointing fingers, but personally for me, I kind of already thought Clay was off when I had talked to him before Nova's video dropped. Nova's video was the definitive factor for me. I'm not blaming anyone for not immediately jumping ship right there, but I'm just saying, there was pretty good proof that Clay was engaging in misconduct, and it only stacked up and got worse over the months. I think when it's very obvious that there's proof, people need to learn to drop their tribalism and wanting to be supportive of a creator, and you need to do what's right. I was never a fan of Clay's content, so I don't really know what to say in that regard, but just because someone made, in your eyes, good art or good content, that doesn't mean they're a good person, and they shouldn't be let off the hook just because they make content that you enjoy. Because you have to remember, whether it's intentional or not, on our end, the personas you see from us online are not the same as who we are in person. And I think the viewer's brain kind of starts to form an ideal version of us. And I'm not saying that's wrong per se, I think that's just human psychology, but it is something to keep in mind, that take off the rose-tinted glasses, especially in situations like this. But yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. Like I said, if anyone out there needs help, if someone you think is misusing you, and you think you might be a victim of sexual assault or harassment or misconduct or whatever, please come talk to us, and we'll see what we can do to help you. We're not lawyers, we're not psychologists, we're not trained, but obviously, if there's something that scares me, is that there's nobody really looking over this community, and there's a lot of young people in the community, and they're vulnerable. And I'm not saying there needs to be any one person, but if anything, I think overall we just need to overall improve the effort, It takes a village. So, yeah, I'm just saying, in the next couple months, we just have to come together, and if something comes around again, we need to be swift about it, and we need to get it taken care of. Because honestly, in my opinion, the fact that it took 3 months for people from October to January to jump ship on Clay, I'm not judging you, I just don't understand how that happened, because there was already really pressing evidence. But again, I'm not going to argue about that. I'm just saying, next time, listen to victims. So yeah, sorry if that was a bit of a ramble. I just wanted to give my genuine, heartfelt thoughts on this to Harv. Thank you for making this video, Harv, addressing the situation with ClayRanger. I think it's very important that creators address situations like these when they're major, and something like this occurs. So again, thank you. This has been Ace, and I appreciate you guys joining me.
To wrap this up, this video documents all of the current evidence against ClayRanger143, real name Michael Day, and shows him to be a sexually obsessive predator who is morally unconcerned with sexual conversations around and towards minors, willing to use coercion and emotional manipulation for sexual gratification, willing to engage in physical contact with minors, and a perpetual victim, angry at the world and blaming everybody else for his problems. In his response to it, he has shown himself to be a liar, and a bad one at that, pretending to be someone else to preserve his platform, and then using that as an attempt to smear the community and the people who have worked to expose what he's done. Michael should stay off the internet until he can get some actual psychological help. He needs to control his libido and impulse, his anger, and consider the potential consequences of his actions. He's already thrown away his platform, his friends, his reputation, and a source of income, and if he fails to understand that, I expect we'll be seeing him behind bars one day, whether that be in 1 year or 10. That's pretty much all I have to say. It's a shame that I had to make this video, but as I said earlier, I felt that it was a duty of mine to do so. Thanks for watching, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you next time.